I grew up in Jamaica in a little home which was headed by a fisherman. And that's what he did for all of his life. My mother never worked one day in her life. Well, let me correct that. She never did gainful employment in the sense that she wasn't employed. Mama, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I love you too. But she was never employed because my father was the breadwinner. And like you, my brother, I grew up in a little church that had a whole bunch of men and women, because the church was a family experience. The church was never an appendage off of the family. It was a part. We weren't allowed to see, they were interrelated, yes? And it seemed to me, as we talk about getting men back into the church, we have to begin to revisit that interrelatedness between the home and the church and the family. You've heard the old African proverb that says it takes a village. There's another one that no one else uses, which says that the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people. The church has got to revisit that notion that there's a deep interconnectedness and interrelatedness between what goes on in the family. So we need to take responsibility and we need to own up to some of what goes on. And what does that mean? Priest told me the other day that he finally got a man to come to his church after years and years of him sitting down in the car in the parking lot when he dropped off his wife and he waited on her. And when the gentleman finally came in, he said, "What took you so long?" And the guy said, "Nobody ever asked me. No one ever asked me." Part of our attempt at getting them involved is that we cannot take for granted that they've been asked to be involved. And we've got to create a question for them. And we've got to create this scenario where they feel that we want you to come, that you're being asked to come. I'm counseling a couple right now because I think, here's something else that I worry about. I think too many of our ladies get comfortable with the notion that it is okay for the husband to drop you off and say, "How much time do you need, honey? What time am I picking you up?" I think, I'm doing a marriage counseling right now, and the young lady said to me, her husband has nothing to do with church. She says, "You need to understand, I'm a church lady. I go to church. It's part of my psychology. If you're going to marry me, you're also going to marry part of my church and my God, because I'm a church person." And it seems to me, when we talk about getting men involved, ladies, I think we have to get our ladies, especially our young people, to understand that when you're dating a guy or whatever, the guy has to understand, listen, church is important. It's an important part of my psychology and my person and my persona. Therefore, if you're going to be connected to me, you need to be connected to my church. I think too often there is the notion that it's okay for you to stay at home. That's not my psychology. That's not how I grew up. My father understood that the church was a family experience. And the family wasn't complete when just mom and the children went. The family was complete when all of us went there and we sat together and we listened together. And I think too often we truncate parts of our lives and compartmentalize the piece of our life so that, this piece appeals to that person over here. Breadwinning, or the notion of breadwinning, does not exclude the notion that I can be part of the church's life. And I think that's a critical piece that we need to say from the pulpit. We need to let the women in the church know, and I'm picking on ladies here, that if you do have a husband at home, I mean that, or a lover, or whatever it is, that it's important for you to say to them, it's not good enough for you just to sit at home. It is not good enough. And I'm not accepting of that. You must come with me because this is part of my psychology. I am not going to just say to you, drop me off on here or pick me back up. This drop me off and pick me back up days must end. Which leads me to where I hope to kind of wrap this up in terms of how we define our ministry to men. One of the conversations I had with Bishop Robinson, who is an interesting guy, and he kind of sees the big picture, I don't know if he'll call himself a maverick, but he certainly likes to do things differently, is how do we create opportunities for people to come to the Episcopal Church at any time? Meaning, and let me try and explain what I'm saying. Church cannot just be Sundays. You cannot define church by just the people who come on Sundays. And I think one of the things, as we attempt to get to men, we have to change the scenario that you only can come on a Sunday. That your ministry, your Christianity or your piety or your righteousness is defined by your ability to come only on a Sunday morning. Sunday morning cannot just be the divine hour. You know, we have got to look at perhaps a Saturday evening, a Saturday afternoon opportunity where it may be easier for a man to come on a Saturday afternoon. It may be easier to come on a Saturday morning. What I'm saying is we have got to relearn all of this ministry, how we do ministry, how we practice ministry. We have got to move away from the notion that because this was how it was, that, you know, it's going to appeal to everybody in the 21st century, and it's not. It is absolutely not. We have to get to cutting edge ministry. We have to be innovative. We have to change things around. We have to move things around. And we have to be willing to facilitate everybody. And so the idea that, you know, everybody has to come on a Sunday morning. There's a Roman Catholic church on the corner of, I believe it's Rockaway and Eastern Parkway. You'll know it because there's some beautiful red doors there. If you drive by there on a Saturday afternoon, the line to get into the Mass is out the door. Because they suddenly discovered that the young people, including the men, who go clubbing and thugging and bugging, are too tired on a Sunday morning to come to church. And they're not going to show up. So what they did, they started the Mass on a Saturday evening. And that Mass is standing room only. And all they did was that there was a willingness to do this differently. And so now they have a Mass on a Saturday evening, and young people and young men come there in droves, simply because they know, they found out that doing their homework, that on a Sunday morning they're way too tired to get up. And we have got to understand that what worked 20 years ago for the new citizen now may not work anymore. And so that will mean doing business differently. And I guess my question to you, as you ask, why are men not coming to church and why is the church going to men, is are we willing to do business differently? And if we are, then we must understand that sometimes it is not always going to be comfortable. You know, be careful what you ask for, because you may get it. And when you get it, when the men and whoever we invite or recruit start coming in, we must create for them an atmosphere where they don't want to leave, and where they feel like they're welcome and that they belong. And so, if we're going to do business differently, it seems to me, there has to be a willingness from the top. Not just a few well-thinking deacons and lay Christian ministers, but the minister, the priest, the bishop, all of us. It must be in our DNA, you know what I mean? That we are willing to change how we do business. We are willing to facilitate the ones who don't want to come on a normal basis. We are willing to mix up and change up how we do business inside the church, so that when they do come, they can feel welcome. And I am not sure, I'm honestly not sure that we are. And that is a tragedy of the situation, because we talk it, and we know it is our Achilles heel, and we know that there should be more men today. We know that because we see it. And we know, honestly, we know what we need to do. We know we need to open the door and swing them wide. And that the doors cannot be just open and swing in one direction. And that's part of the problem with the Episcopal Church, that the door has been swinging in one direction, which means people are coming in. but we haven't been going out. If we're going to swing the door in two directions, we must understand that there are implications and consequences for us. And that the brothers who come in may want things different. And they may want to sit at a different place. And I have a lady who actually, when and I've had numerous conversations with her, love her to death. And the only problem is that she pledges well. She pledges well, so I'm very careful about what I say to her about, because I don't want her to stop pledging. I'm not messing with that. When I look at by the end of the year, I go, yes, yeah. But every Sunday, if you dare sit in her chair, she will literally tell you to go, move over. Because it's her chair. And I complain about it. I said, leave her alone. No, I said, because she pledges well. And I don't want to mess with that. But the truth is, Audrey, that chair doesn't belong to you. It really doesn't. And we have to make those empty chairs available to everybody. So when they come and sit, they don't feel like, there's a I if you remember the word I used a few years ago, catch. It's a Jamaican word, catch. And catching is like you temporarily sit. So not all of you sitting on the chair, all of you sitting. Because why? Because you can get up and move. But the reason why we used to catch in Jamaica was because you really weren't, you weren't ready to stay. You weren't ready to commit yourself. Because you weren't sure. So we have got to get our men to a place where they feel like this is yours. You don't have to catch here. Every Sunday we welcome people at Redeemer. We say to them that there's a space here for you. So if you don't have a home church, that space there is yours. I am honored by this tremendous attempt of yours, and I really do hope that we can take it to the next level, because all of us are looking at this conversation and hoping that and knowing that we don't have all the answers, absolutely not. And maybe they're the ones on the outside who have the answers as to why they're not coming. And we need to get to them and say, why aren't you coming? But the beginning of the conversation is important. And I really again want to thank you for the opportunity. I hope I've provoked some things in you and raised some things that will lead to the table conversations and the panel discussion. And thank you very much.